Hello everyone and welcome to today's bonus call. This is the second bonus call we've had in our series and it's a very special call because we're going to go through step by step how to delegate. This subject is very close to my heart. I love presenting this training to a live audience because I love taking them from one mindset to another, because usually when we start talking about delegating effectively, most people believe that they can't trust their employees, that they it's the problem lies with the other person. And as we start going through the training, that reality or that belief starts to shift a little bit, and people start to realize that, maybe I could have done it a little bit better, which of course they know. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going to the training. But what this is about is we're going to be cutting straight to the heart of the information in this particular call. Rather than going through the full version that I would, of course, in a live call, because in a live workshop, because in a live workshop I've got 3 hours to help people, to take them on that journey, as they say, where they transform. With you guys, I've got an hour. So let me cut straight to the information, so that the next time you delegate, you get what you want by the due date. And if you don't get it by the due date in exactly the same, in the package that you want, the format that you want, you'll know exactly what you need to do for next time to make sure that you do. And you're probably going to be very surprised by what I tell you today. All right, so hello to everyone who's joining us. I can see people joining us as we go through, as we're starting up. For people on the actual program, if you have completed your 7 accountabilities, make sure you drop me an email at angie@timeequalsmoney.net.au so I can pay you your $100 for finishing the course. Well done to those crossing the finishing line this week. Congratulations to you. Woohoo! Well done. You can hear me clapping there. As always, share your success on Facebook. Encourage others to finish too. Share what you've noticed since starting the program, what your biggest takeaways are. I cannot stress share, because this sharing really motivates others, because the message taken from you finishing is that I can do it too. And it's not impossible. It's not impossible. Of course, it's very possible. All right, so for those of you who are not there yet, take stock, power home, and as soon as you're done, regardless of how long it takes you, let me know that you're done and I'll get you your payment. I really want you to finish, all right? Don't let it drag on forever. Not for me, for you. Get it finished as quickly as you possibly can so you can start living and breathing those techniques as part of things that you do every single day. All right, lastly, before we get into today's content, earlier this week I sent out an email detailing my availability for one-to-one sessions with me, which was a bonus for the group who joined the Practical Time Management for Entrepreneurs. Make sure you decide on a date that suits you and get back to me. First in, first serve. If you could give me 2 dates, that would be great, and indicate your first and second preference, please. The spots are filling up, so it's very likely your first preference may not be available. Okay, so let's get on to today's content. As always, if you have a question for me, type it in and I will answer all the questions at the end today. If you're listening to this webinar after the event, after this call, and you've got a question, it's never too late to ask the question, so email me, okay? Ask for what you want. All right, let's get into today's subject. First question is, before I ask this question actually, how many of you here delegate? How many of you here have either people that you delegate, staff, or that you outsource? And outsourcing is different, slightly different to delegation, I believe, but only slightly. The foundations of delegation are similar, but not entirely the same. It's a different subject, but related, closely related. All right, so people are typing in, yes, I've got staff, I outsource. All right, great. Okay. How did you learn how to delegate then? Type in your answer for me, by the way. Trial and error, yep. Don't know how to delegate. Thanks for being honest. Okay, doing it on the run, not doing it well. So it sounds to me that basically you're just asking people to help you do stuff in your own way. That's what it sounds like to me. And this is basically what most people do. They don't have a lot of science or systems to delegate. And of course, you know me, I'm all about systems, making it easier to replicate. So tell me if this scenario sounds at all familiar to you. All right, you have got some stuff to do that you could delegate, but you don't, because it would just be faster if you did it yourself. But you don't do the job because it keeps getting pushed along and pushed along because there are other priorities that you have to get done first. And finally, you decide to delegate it out because it's now urgent. The deadline is upon you. It needs to get done, and you just don't have time to do it because you're buried with doing other things. The person you give the job to also has lots of other things on their plate, and they probably also really don't have time to do it, and they really don't understand the priority that where this particular job fits in with amongst all the other things. Like, why is it important to get it done? How does it impact on the business, etc.? They don't understand the context, really. You've sort of given them the job and given them some instructions in a rush. They haven't quite understood what the whole job is or what's really requiring of them. So when it's time to that the job has to be finished, you find that it hasn't been done completely, or it's been completely done incorrectly, or it's not done at all. So you stay up all night fixing it. Everything else basically then is piled on top of your next day because, you know, you've had to shove everything else out of the way to get it done. This sort of cements in your mind that everybody else is useless. If you want a job done properly, you have to do it. You should have done it in the first place. You knew it would have been easier, blah, 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 blah. Now, your experience, can you relate to that sort of experience? Your experience may not be as severe as this, but it may have some shades of this. Yes, some people are commenting, actually, this sounds exactly like me. Have you been watching me? No, it's exactly how a lot of people delegate, not with any bad intention. They just haven't learned how to delegate effectively so that they feel comfortable delegating. This is how, as I said, most delegation occurs. There is a process to delegating that if you follow it, it'll not only help you delegate to the person who has no clue how to do the job, it will enable you to get something back very close to what you want. Because remember, and I've said this in an earlier module, the first thing that we need to accept when we delegate is that the person is not you. So they're never going to do the job exactly the same as you. A very rare person might, there's always a bell curve. There's always around, that 2 to 20% that might, but the majority will not. Their job is to take the heavy lifting out of it for you so that they basically get done between 60 to 90%, depending on their experience with the job, and how, basically with their experience with the job is really all I need to say. You'll always have something of the job to finish off if you want it to be a specific way. All right, so as long as you know that off the bat and you factor that into your planning, all will end well perfectly. All right? But this guide, these steps that I'm going to give you will enable you to delegate to anyone. There's so much benefits to it, and we'll go through that in a moment. All right, so what's my experience with delegation? I think many of you know that I used to work in the ATO, and I used to work in a section called, which was part of the ATO at the time, called the Child Support Agency. Now, working in the Child Support Agency and working in the ATO is like black and white. In the ATO, when I worked there, I think it's different now, but when I worked there, it was an absolute doddle. You had 8 people in a team, 1 manager, 8 people. It was so easy, to do everything that you needed to do. Having said that, a lot of my peers didn't keep up with the work. Very interesting. But for me, it was a doddle. In the ATO, in the Child Support Agency, you had a much bigger team. It was almost like a classroom. You had about 15 to 20 people in your team. Right? The team that I had was a team of probationers. And so I had, they used to call it Angie's Empire. It was the first time they had actually ever set up the probation team like this. So I had 10 technical support staff, a team of 10 that I had to manage and develop and, do all the normal administration and relationship and support, etc., for those 10 people, who were brilliant, by the way. I had 10 great people. But of course, when you've got 10 great people, you've got aspirations and ambitions to manage and support, So it was fun stuff to support those particular team. And I had a team of 32 probationers. Now, in the ATO, or Child Support Agency, it's exactly the same. With probationers, you have to report on them weekly. So you've got 12 weeks to make a decision whether they stay or whether they are released for other opportunities. And you have to report on them weekly. Normally, you might have 1 probationer in your team. You might have a team of probationers of 8, maybe 5 or 6 probationers. You never have a team of 32 probationers to report on weekly, 1 person reporting on them weekly. It's unheard of. But that was my life. And like a true legend, I would report on every single one without fail every week. And my technical team supported me. So I relied on that technical team a lot to help me, believe me. That was when I had a team. Currently, I also have a team, but all of them are outsourced. So I have a virtual assistant, which is a VA. She's a PA, but she doesn't live in the same country as me, so I don't see her, but we're in touch quite a lot. I have a person that manages my Facebook page because I'm useless with Facebook. I just don't add anything. I add ad hoc, not on a regular basis. I have a help desk, an IT support help desk that I keep very busy. I have a writer and editor, so he helps me with writing books, he helps me with writing newsletters, he helps me proofread everything. I also have a proofreader if I've written something, so like workbooks, etc. Normally I put those together, and my proofreader actually just proofs them and makes sure they're all standardized and reading correctly, etc. I have a graphics designer I have a person who transcribes things for me. And then depending on the job, I'll employ ad hoc. So I might get somebody to help me with copy, for example, which is marketing, writing the actual copy, which is different from just writing newsletters, etc. So definitely, I think I was doing delegation well when I worked for the ATO, because my team hummed. We worked really well together. But I've definitely translated that into what I do with the outsourcing. However, there is a system that I've distilled from what I did, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Now, the reason why I delegate, the definition of delegation first, is to give a task to somebody else with responsibility to act on your behalf, to give them the power to act and make decisions and allocate resources on your behalf. Okay, so basically, when you employ somebody, you have delegated your duties or some of what you would do if you were a solopreneur to them. It's still delegation. So delegation is not just your one-off tasks that you ask somebody to do for you. Delegation is they are doing a job that if they were not there, you would do. And it could be a whole job. All right? Delegation to me is basically means that I don't store the results of my business because there's too many tasks that I don't like doing or I'm not skilled at. I delegate so I can spend the majority of my time doing stuff that only I can do, or that I want to do and I do well. That's why I delegate, why I outsource. Because if I didn't outsource, I could learn, but it would take a lot of time. And there are things that I don't want to learn. I'm not interested in learning how to do IT stuff. I have learned a lot, don't get me wrong, over the years, but I've shortcutted that learning by having people, by outsourcing or by having a good coach. So that's why I delegate. Why do you delegate? Why do you want to delegate? What's your purpose for delegating? And given your reasons why you want to delegate, are you willing to do things slightly differently? When we delegate well, there are many benefits. You know, not only do you get to get more done in the same, so instead of having an hour, you've got 2 hours if you've got a person that you've delegated. So you get to leverage your own time. You get to expand the skills of your people. You get to have a bit of a work-life balance. There's so many reasons and benefits for you to delegate. You get less stress. You have a better reputation with your staff because they know you're not a control freak. You're a person that wants others to expand their knowledge and become self-sufficient and actually contribute to the organisation. You can have the business run without you if you start delegating and systemizing that delegation. And I'm going to show you how. If you delegate for the delegatee, the person who's being delegated to, they get a sense of achievement from doing stuff that's more challenging. Greater job satisfaction. This is one of the main reasons why people actually join an employer or stay with an employer, because of the variety, the challenge, the self-expression that they get to experience by working with them. You can tap into the talents of that person beyond their, job description. So, for example, you probably have a lot of people, you may have people in your work environment that are great at Facebook, but you're not. You know, given some parameters, some guidance, a course, a good course, you could tap into that talent, that love of Facebook, and get them to apply it to your business. When you the benefits to the delegatee also is that they start to have a better reputation amongst their peers. You know? They have better promotion prospects, which may be good for you if you can offer that. But, you know, it's just evolvement that people move on and other people come in. And it's good for everyone usually. The impacts to the organisation when you delegate effectively is that you've got a more effective and motivated workforce. You reduce staff turnover and absenteeism. You have better employees wanting to work with you. You get a better reputation with your clients and your customer because of the way that they feel, because they can feel that the people who work with you are happy to be there. You get a great reputation as an organisation. You know, I've just said the tip of the iceberg. So I'm sure you'll be able to think of many more benefits than that. But there's also impacts, negative impacts, when you don't delegate effectively. Like for yourself, you could be seen as a control freak. You could be seen as a poor communicator. You could be seen as a fool, if I cut straight to the chase, you know, somebody who delegates a job out to 10 different people and then does it themselves, a time waster. You could be seen as somebody who doesn't follow up, so there's no point. There's no point in wasting my time if the person who's delegated to me isn't going to follow up. How important is it to them if they never even ask me whether the job is done or not? Okay? So to the delegatee, the impact is as they're seen as a poor employee, possibly unharshly. They don't get a chance to develop skills that they could be contributing to the organisation. They feel that there's no point in actually opening their mouth or helping because they're not listened to. You know, anything that they do is changed. Have you ever had that happen? Have you ever been delegated something and you've done it only to have your boss change it completely when they could have just given you the correct instructions in the first place? The impacts on the organisation when something's delegated poorly is that there's delays in delivery. The client experience is different each time the client comes. The service isn't consistent. It's difficult to recruit because people are not telling others what a great organisation it is. You just continue to recruit poorly. Again, many negative, and the negatives are much worse than the positives, but the positives can actually make your business soar. When we actually don't delegate well, what we're usually doing is abdicating responsibility. What does that actually mean? It means that we're failing to inspect. We've basically given somebody a job to do and we're sink or swim, it's up to them to get it done. And we don't pay any attention to that until the last second, at which point that's if we even inspect again, we decide that the person's done a bad job. Stephen Covey found that 60% of an employee's time is wasted because of unclear or ambiguous expectations. 60%. That's a lot of time and a lot of resentment and bad feelings brewing. So the motto of this is don't abdicate. What you're wanting to do is delegate. What you're wanting to do is inspect. because, as I've said over and over, is you get what you inspect. So if you're not inspecting throughout the course of that job getting done, you're going to get whatever you get. When you inspect, you make sure that the job is never too far off track. So how do you inspect without micromanaging or doing the job yourself? Maybe this question's on your lips at this point, and I'm glad you asked, because I'm going to take you through how to do that with the system in a second. But before I do, let me give you some rules of thumb around what to delegate, because this is also usually a big question for people. All right, so who to delegate to, what to delegate. All right. First rule of thumb is this. If the person can do the job 70% of what you can do the job, then they are a great person to actually delegate to. You are still going to have to check in with them. However, it's not going to be as frequent as somebody who's less than 70%. So you can still delegate to a person who has never done the job before, but just know that you're going to have to inspect more frequently. So, for example, you might give the job to Angie, and Angie's never done that job before. You know she's never done that job before. And you might say, Angie, I'm giving you this job, and when we go through the guide, I'll explain to you what you need to give to her so she knows what to do. And you're going to say, I know you've got no experience doing this job, or you may not be familiar with doing this job. So what I'm going to do is, later today, I'm going to check in with you as to what you think your next step is. So have a look at the job, scope it out, put some ideas together, and later today, let's catch up about 3 o'clock, and I'll go through. I want to hear your thoughts about what your next steps are, and I'll give you some guidance. So at 3 o'clock, you don't miss that appointment. You catch up with Angie, you have a listen, and you give her some guidance. And you say, great, I want you to make a start on that, Angie. And what's your workload like? You've got to make sure she's got time to do it. And you're going to say, tomorrow or the next day, depending, I'm going to check in with you again. I want to see how you're progressing. Now, the reason why we do this is so we can make sure we keep nudging her, or we keep her on the right course. So let me explain what that means. Let me get a little pen here. And I may have gone through this before, but I love this story. That's my moon. Here's my rocket. It's going to the moon. There's the flames there. All right. So most people think a rocket goes to the moon in a straight line, but it doesn't. The rocket goes off course all the time. But because NASA or whoever is paying attention to what it's doing, it makes sure that it never goes too far off track, that it corrects or self-corrects continually to eventually get to the moon. Now, if NASA was not watching what it was doing, what the rocket was doing, it could easily just continue off on the wrong path and get to a different planet altogether. There's my Saturn. So you can see how that can happen if we're not continually nudging and self-correcting and watching what's going on. All right, people? So you can, if somebody is less than 70%, you are just going to have to make sure you inspect so that you constantly keeping them not too far from the right path. And I will give you a system on how to do that, but that's basically what needs to happen. All right. If the job is repeatable, whoopsie-daisy, it's also a very good job to delegate. If you're doing it over and over again, and there's lots of things that you do over and over again, like research. Research can be templated. Research. Just about everything can be templated. Writing a newsletter, researching topics for a newsletter can be templated and outsourced. Facebook can be outsourced. So just about everything that you do could have a system that somebody else does for you. If it wasn't true, there wouldn't be a McDonald's on every street corner that, 20-year-olds are running. Everything that you do tends to be repeatable, and you could systemize what you're doing so that somebody else can do it. Another rule of thumb is if the job is worth less than $50 an hour to do, if you could pay somebody less than $50 an hour to do that job, then that's a good job to delegate. Get somebody else to do that job. If you don't know how to do it and you're not really keen on learning or mastering that skill, then delegate it out to somebody who already has that skill or is keen on learning it. If you don't like to do it, another one. Delegate it out so it doesn't stall your business, so that it doesn't become a big problem, a big crisis. These are jobs to actually delegate out. All right. Let's get into the guide. Have you got your notes handy? I asked you to get this particular document handy for the call so we can go through it. Now, before we go through this, just so you know, let me give you some context. There are 3 parts to delegation. There's the before, there's the during, and there's the after. And most people miss all 3. That's my experience. Most people don't do any other than give the job on the run. So I'm going to go through the system as to how to do this. So let's go to the handout, shall we? So drawings, normal handout. Okay, so we're on this page here. Step-by-step guide to effective delegation. Let me get my notes. All right, so we're on to the before. The first before is here. What job, this is a before. What job are you going to delegate? When delegating, you want to know what outcome you're actually after. I'm not going to write all these. It's going to take me too long. You're going to have to take notes, okay? What outcome do you want? Really quantify by what do you want and by when. How long would that job take you to do if you were going to actually do it in hours? How long do you think it's going to take that person, given their experience with the job, given how many stakeholders are involved? The job may only take 1 hour to do, but when you involve other people, it can take weeks, right? What skills are required by the person to do that job? Does the person you are going to delegate this to have those skills? Do they need to learn some stuff? Do you know enough about the job? Because if you don't know and they don't know, how are they going to get it right? Right? If you're still really getting clear on what the job looks like, then it's going to be very ambiguous or very difficult for the person to deliver what you're wanting. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying don't delegate it, because it's easier to edit, and a project can evolve as you get clearer on what you're after. But just know that that's the case. Don't expect the person to give you, you know, don't expect them to read your mind or to know exactly what you're wanting when you don't know what you're wanting, all right? That's my point. So what job are you going to delegate? And be a bit strategic. Don't always give it to the person who says yes, who willingly says yes, who never gives you a hard time about saying yes. Be strategic. Who would be the best person to give this job to? When I say be specific, let me finish on that note. Well, think about your people's talents and if they're needing a challenge. It could be the very thing to lift an employee up and re-engage them. When I say specific, think numbers. You want a 10-page report, the first report. You want a 10-page report. You want these particular top subjects in those reports. Let me get rid of this writing. You want for example, you want a one-page, you want them to investigate 5 websites on this particular subject and come up with a one-page recommendation. If you can show them what you want, give them an example, it makes it much easier to deliver for you and make it what is delivered closer to what you're wanting. Now remember, all of these so far that I've been going through are all before you've even spoken to them. All right? They're all before. What else do you need? So specific outcomes, if you can give them an example, give them an example. Give them some parameters in numbers, So you might want to say, okay, this job I'm expecting this job to take you 2 hours. All right? Quantify. The way this job looks like is this. This is the outcome or close to the outcome that I'm envisaging. If you can make it better, I'm open to ideas. This is specifically, you won't want to spend 10% of your time in the research and 40% in the actual putting it together. Give numbers. Numbers help people get an idea, a boundary as to what's expected so that they don't go over the top or they don't go too little. Just right. And I always tell this story when I deliver this training about this person I worked with in the tax office who was the exact opposite to me. I was very detailed, very step-by-step, pull your sleeves up, get it done sort of person. And she was like big picture, one idea links to another that takes you off on a tangent, just always exploring possibilities. So my boss put us on a project together because she could see that we were 2 different personalities, but we just clashed. We didn't know how to work together. And they brought in what I called a marriage counsellor to try to help us work together, but it didn't work. All we did was complain about each other. Even she couldn't help us to see how we could work together. And I look back now and I think, God, that could have so easily been solved, but it wasn't. It wasn't because they didn't show us the strengths in each other and how to work with each other. It was such a shame. But anyway, my point of the story is this. If you give me a job like, I need to go to Dubai, get me on a plane to Dubai, you will be there, tomorrow. You will be It might not be on a date that you want. It might not be in the right type of travel that you want, economy, first class, business class, etc. It might not be in the right price range. It might not be your accommodation in Dubai. It might not be the right stars that you want. You know, it might be 3 stars or 4 stars or 5 stars, but you'll be there. Do you get what I mean? If you had given it to my colleague, she would never have got you there because she would just continually be researching for the best deal. Where do you stop? The way to help both of us is to give us some parameters. I want to go between these dates. I want to spend this much. I'd like to, this much on accommodation, this much on airfares. I'd like to go in business class if it fits in that parameters. Give me the best star accommodation in this price range. I'd like it to be close to, you know, non-smoking. I'd like it to be close to a shopping centre for my family to be able to go somewhere while I'm at work, etc. Some information helps, but it does take some forethought from you first. What do they need to get the job, to do the job? That's the next question. As I said, if you can give them an example, that's fantastic. In fact, the best usually. Do they need some instructions? Have you got a procedure that they can test for robustness, you know, for clarity? Because, you know, I work with lots of organisations, and I'll tell you now, whoever wrote the procedures is usually too familiar with the job, so they miss out, or they think you know what they're talking about, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. I was just with an organisation yesterday, and the boss sent out this email saying, these are the instructions. It was like it was in another language. I couldn't understand a word they were saying because it just assumes people know where the report is that he's talking about, know which one it's called. We had a devil of a time even finding it. So it's really great to get procedures tested out for robustness. And of course, if you've got 10 people looking at something, you'll have 10 different opinions. But what you're wanting is somebody to be able to follow it step by step. So do you have procedures that you can give them? If not, get them to write them. Should they be looking at YouTube maybe? You know, my husband often asks me questions, and I always say to him, have you tried YouTube? In fact, the other day, I was with my kids at the pools, and I knew I'd be there for a few hours, so I was writing a newsletter, so I was there with my computer. They were in the pools, and I was writing the newsletter. And this gentleman beside me said to me, is it easy to use Word? He was an elderly gentleman. And I said to him, you know what, if you don't know how to use it, just go how to use Word basics in YouTube. Try YouTube. I said, do you know how to use YouTube? Do you watch YouTube? He said, yes, all the time. I said, then just use YouTube to teach you what you need to do or what you're looking for. And he just thought that, of course. So maybe they need to do some research themselves. Tell them that you might need to use YouTube. You might need to Google for some instructions. Google is my friend, I'll tell you that much. I never reinvent the wheel. I always try Google first. So if I'm writing a report, I'll say free report template so I can get some ideas. You know, free template for whatever. You'll be surprised what you find. Usually somebody else has done it before you. Okay, so give them instructions. Maybe point them in the direction of YouTube or Google. Do they need a budget? Do they need money to get this job? How much time is it going to take them in hours? It's very important you know this. And very important you factor in that if others are involved, it could take them longer. Do you need to review their workload to have a look at what's on their plate, maybe renegotiate deadlines with them? So you've asked them to do something, but this job that you're delegating now is more important. So the other job can be pushed out a bit more or put on the back burner. Help them know what's on their plate in quantity of time, and this is where your workload calculator and scheduling your workload really comes in handy for everybody. Everybody in your team should be filling that sheet out. All right. What obstacles might they encounter? Now remember, we're still on the before. We haven't spoken to them yet. We're still going through everything that you need to go through before you delegate. Now you might think you don't have time to do this. This is a very easy thing to do. It doesn't take much time. Just fill in the answers here and you've done it. You've sufficiently thought about it. But most people don't stop and think. Right? And that's why delegation fails, because you haven't planned sufficiently the job or stopped to sufficiently think about it before you've opened your mouth. You know, you also might want to think, am I muddling up? Am I going to stop them from actually achieving what I want them to do by putting something else on their plate? Is this really more important than the things we've agreed they should be doing? Sometimes because we've got more people, we take on more and more stuff. So we're not really leveraging any time. In fact, all we're doing is pouring more stuff on top of an already full work schedule. So really stop and think, is this job impactful and in the short term or in the long term? And you can start to hear how everything I've taught you in the Practical Time Management for Entrepreneurs program is coming into play, can't you? The workload calculator, the 80-20, where you're thinking, yes, this is a job that needs to be done, it's impactful, it's important to the actual organization. You can see how everything's coming into play. All right, so once you've thought through all these things, oh, sorry, I did mention obstacles. I didn't finish that thought. So have a think about what obstacles might they encounter and how you can help them overcome them, because there's some things that are in their circle of influence, but there'll be some things that are out of their circle of influence, but they impact on the actual project that they've got to do. What is that portion and how can you help them do something about that portion? I hope that's clear. All right, so once you've thought through these things about the job that you're going to delegate, you need to speak to them. And you also have to have an idea, actually, about how often you would like them to report to you. So to get an idea about this, you want to consider their experience with the job. Do they have a lot of experience or very little experience? Oh, come on, Ange, faster. And you also have to consider your experience of working with them. Are they a person that delivers every single time? If they are, you might just need them to say, you might just say to them, look, I know that you deliver every single time. All I want is for you to tell me the job is done. That's it. I don't need to check in with you every week about how it's going. If there's a problem, obviously, come and speak to me and let me know about it. With the person who never delivers, then you're going to want to obviously have them report in more frequently. And that might be once a week. It could be even twice a week. It all depends on the actual job then and how urgent it actually is, how complicated it is, what their experience is with it. But I think that gives you a bit of a guideline, a bit of a scope. All right, so now we've done all the before work. Now it's time to actually speak to the person. So you meet with them. and you take them through what the project is, the specific outcomes that you need. You give them examples, parameters, so they know in numbers. You tell them when it's due, not the when you hope, but when it's actually due, when you really need it by. You might ask them, what do they need to get the job done? You have a look at their workload to see if they have the time to do it or if you need to help them reprioritize the work that they've got, because they know that you want something done by a certain date, and because of this new job you might think that, well, that one can wait or it can go to somebody else. So you really need to have a look at their workload. That is something that should be happening every week anyway. Once you've delegated and agreed on how they're going to report, how frequently and how, is it going to be via email? Is it going to be during a face-to-face meeting? Once you've agreed, then they can go off and do it. All through the project, you meet with them and you get updates. Your job is to mentor and to coach them. It's not to do the job for them, it's to offer guidance. Your job is to make sure that you get what you're after and that they never stray too far from what you're after. Right? You sort out the problems they can't sort out, problems that are out of their circle of influence, but it is in your circle of influence. That's your job through the project. Their job, and you might want to make this clear to them up front. You might even want to make this clear to people when they actually join your organisation. Their job is to get the job finished to what you want or something better than what you want. Their job is to tell you if there's a problem and it's going to jeopardise the project. Not to CC you in on every action so that you're in the loop. That's too much information, and stop people from doing that and stop encouraging people from doing that. You don't need all that information. That is micromanaging, by the way. Their job is to report back progress, to use their initiative, and to give the job a go using their resourcefulness. Their job is to be able to do this job in the future without asking questions. So if that was the case, if they had to do the job in the future without asking questions, if they had to be able to delegate that job to somebody else, right, then what do they need to put in place so they can do that? And relying on their memory is insufficient. It's corporate knowledge. It has to be physical so that it stays with the business. Right? A memory is intangible, and a memory is different for many people. So it has to be something tangible. So they better template what they're doing, or check that if there are procedures, check that they're robust enough so that somebody else can follow them should they need to, so that they can follow them again in the future. Right? So that's during the job. The last part is after the job. Once it's finished, after the job, you need to review. And the point of the review is to leave the actual process of doing delegation and the process of doing the job better than when you first did it. Right? So, for example, the procedures are in place or they're improved. The working relationship between you and the person is enhanced because you can self-correct the delegation process so it gets easier, faster, and aligned to how you both work. You want, the point of the review is so that your employee becomes more confident, feels valued, and a valued part of the organisation, and knows that their contribution is of benefit. Right? You want them to be as self-sufficient as possible, as self-reliant, as quickly as possible. And the review process gives you a way of doing that. So your job again, is to coach. And if you remember in Module 6, we talked about the systemization of review. What happened? The facts, right? Not excuses, just what happened. Was it delivered? Was it delivered on time? Was it delivered to the satisfaction of you and the stakeholders? What actually happened? Right? What were the key accomplishments? Right? So what worked? Why did it work? We need to continue with this. What didn't work? What are you going to do differently? You need to maybe stop doing this and start doing that. What's missing that you're going to start doing? And where to from here? You recognize the process, don't you? You ask the questions. That's your job. Their job is to answer the questions. You can give each other feedback. You can even do a stop, start, keep for both of you. I'd like you to, next time you delegate to me, boss, I'd like you to do this. Maybe stop doing that and keep doing this, because that really helped. So you can start to self-correct the way you work with that person. You can learn how to better communicate and better motivate that person through what they tell you. And likewise, they learn how to work better as part of your organization. You want them to start doing this, stop doing that, keep doing this. That's about the delegation, reviewing the delegation process, but you want to do the review about the actual job. All right? That's it. See, most of the work is done up front. If you do the first bit right and you follow through on your follow-up, you should really never go too far from what you want. In fact, in all cases, you'll get what you need done on time and to your satisfaction. You sniff out a problem earlier by getting them to report more regularly, or getting them to report regularly, because most people don't have a systemized way of doing it. If they're not starting, don't stand for excuses. If their workload is reasonable, then they should have started and they should have got it underway. Now, technology can help you manage everything you delegate, especially if you're delegating lots of things. We don't have time in the call to go through this. It is already 10, oh my God, it's already 11 o'clock. But I do have a little video of how to do this on Outlook. I don't have a video of how to do it on Gmail, but I will see if I can find them, and I'll send you links to those if I do. Let me quickly go through the questions that are here. We're probably going to take another 5 minutes or so, probably 10 minutes. So if you can stay on the line, please do. And if not, I understand. I'll get a recording of this to you. But it's going to take another 10 minutes at least. So let me answer the questions as they've come through. Okay. So, all right, first question is delegation rules. Are there a set of rules that you can, how to focus time better for big projects? Yes, I think I've covered these, but let me summarize them for you here. They are the 70% rule. Gauge how that tells you how much reporting will need to be done, how much support you need to give to the person, really. If the job is repeatable, great job to delegate, great job to template. Be specific is the third rule. Use numbers wherever possible. Give examples so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Inspect reporting. That's crucial through the actual project, and not missing the reporting. Making sure you're showing up for it, not cancelling it at the last second every single time. Giving a real due date. There's always two dates. There's the date the person first gives, and then there's the real date. Always give them the real date, not ASAP either. Checking their workload and helping them manage, because Remember, they're trying to do everything that you've told them to do. But sometimes you can't remember everything, and sometimes some of those dates, deadlines, need to be adjusted given the new priorities coming up. And they can't do that because you've already told them one date. So if you want to change that date, you need to be mindful of their workload. Also, you might need to take something off their plate that's either died or give it to somebody else to do. So help them manage their workload so they can help you do what you want them to do. And the last one that I think is a definite rule is you have to think through your job sufficiently so that you're prepared when you go to delegate. That's the biggest one. If you can do that, then the rest of the process is actually much easier, providing you are checking in with them. Oh, last one, sorry. Review the process at the very end. They're the rules. 6, they are the rules. All right, next question. How do you manage all the questions? If they've got lots, it can be a few things. We all take, okay, how do you manage all the questions? It can be lots. All right, oh, that's a lot of questions are similar to this. So let me just answer that bunch of questions. I'm sorry, I'm not going to name them because we don't have the time. All right, so look, we all take information in differently, and you might need to adjust your communication style to the person. If you think of this lesson, for example, you can hear what I'm saying. So if you're an audio person, you can hear what I'm saying. If you're taking lots of notes, you're engaging that kinesthetic side of you. You know, you've got your pen and your paper, and you're taking notes. You're involved. You're doing something. And if you can see what's happening on screen. So if you're a visual person, that helps you. Usually we're a combination of the three. So engaging all three senses helps you to interpret the messages that I'm giving you. So how can you do this with the people you have? By giving them an example of what you want so they can see what you want. They may never have done the job before, so you might get them to write procedures for themselves. And you may have to check in with them once or twice a day for 10 minutes to go through all their questions. So that's the auditory. That's the kinesthetic. Depending on the risk, you might suggest that they try to work it out themselves using the internet, you know, so they might search YouTube, Google. For me, though, for example, reading instructions doesn't help me much. But if I'm seeing it, it's much easier for me to actually understand it. If I'm writing, so I'm asking questions and I'm writing the instructions, it's easier for me again. So see if there's a free template, for example. As I said, I always try not to reinvent the wheel. The main thing is, however, you don't want to be at their beck and call. So this gives them an opportunity to try to solve the problem themselves. And you want to keep repeating to them that you want them to be as self-sufficient as possible, as quickly as possible. So what do they need to put in place to be able to do this without reinventing the wheel? Right? It's not what do you need to do, it's what do they need to do to become self-sufficient. And if you've got procedures, get them to test them out. Okay, next question. Perfect. It's like they read my mind. We have procedures for everything, but people keep asking me rather than checking the procedure because it's faster to ask me. It's also dangerous, but I understand. What I would do is, okay, so depending on the urgency of the question, if you've got a client on the phone, then you might just want to answer their question there and then. However, if they can batch their questions and hold their questions off, so they ask you 5 questions at once, I would get them to batch their questions, so that at least you can reduce the number of times you're being interrupted. Okay, you might also want to notice the questions that are asked. So you might want to use the interruptions log I gave you in an earlier module, and then see, are there themes? Are there themes to the questions being asked? So do you need to do a training course on that? Better still, get that person to do a training course on that, a mini one in a team meeting. Get the whole team to research and present at team meetings. Give them questions, give them their questions back to them so that they research these questions in between the work that they're doing. If they're a call center, for example, what is a big business? Give them 5 questions that they have to research between one meeting to the next, and the person who gets all 5 questions right gets a prize. What you want them to do is get used to using the tools that you have when they're not under stress of having to give a client the correct answer, so that they can use the tools and processes you have when they are under stress. I hope you're understanding me there. Next question. How do you get them to stop interrupting me politely? Let me ask you, when you're in a meeting with a client or with your colleagues, do they interrupt you constantly, or do they only interrupt you with urgent questions that can't wait? If the answer is that they don't interrupt you when you're in a meeting, then you might need to tell them when you're off limits and trying to concentrate, and when you're open for questions. But also you want to say to them, look, if you cannot wait till I'm available again, then feel free to interrupt me. You'll cut out probably 8 out of 10 questions. You're not going to cut out all of them. And you need to keep coaching. This is like children, people. Every day, my boy's 11, and every day I have to remind him to brush his teeth. Because if I don't, when we are in the car, I say to him, have you brushed your teeth? He'll say no if I haven't reminded him. It's just like children. You have to keep. So what I'm saying is, with some people, you're going to have to say to them, could this have waited till I was free again? You might need to make the connection for them if they're interrupting you still, and it could have waited. Right? But what we've probably done, or what you may have done up until now, is you haven't told them when you're not available and when you're available again. And you possibly even encouraged them to interrupt you whenever they have a question. You need to take back a bit of control there, and basically decide when you are trying to concentrate and when you're going to be free again after that, and when you're open for questions. Now, if you don't plan well, then that's going to be hard for you to do, because all you're going to be doing basically is lurching from one crisis to the next. Planning is the key to be able to help you manage interruptions, to be able to prioritize well. It really is the key, central to everything. And I know for those of you who are doing PTME, Practical Time Management for Entrepreneurs, I know that you know that this is what I preach through the course and the techniques I share with you. All right, next question. What if everything is due at the same time? Where do you start? How to manage an unrealistic workload? This is the last question I'll be taking because we're on 10 past 11 now. You start on the most important, and you can quickly gauge what is most important using the impact and ease grid. If you haven't downloaded that tool yet, I've got one at the moment. I'll include that in the link. But you did get it as part of the program if you've done the program. when you use this particular tool, it will tell you what is most important and what's most urgent. And urgent, of course, relates to time. Impact, of course, relates to importance to the business now or in the future. With the ones that fall in the quadrant of not urgent, not important, get rid of them. Simple as that. Stop doing them. See if when you stop doing it, if it has an impact on your business. Okay, I've got one last question, because it has a please answer this question, but this is the last one I'm taking. How do you coach employees on the run? This is very stressful for the employee if you haven't recruited personalities that can cope with this. But I'll tell you now, there's probably, if you're doing it on the run, you want to have great systems in place. You want to have robust procedures. You want to, otherwise there's going to be a lot of waste of time, a lot of waste of money, a lot of duplication, a lot of, probably a lot of long hours. But anyway, here's some ideas just off the top of my head. Get them to self-coach rather than you coaching them, to use the review process. Get them to tell you how to work with them best so you can cut straight to that, but they've got to know how they work best. Maybe there's somebody else senior in the organisation that can coach them. Maybe it's somebody not in the organisation that can coach them. Give them examples so that they can see what you want. Use the review process I went through earlier. So just keep it to the basic stops. Doing this, start doing that, keep doing this. That's really a very quick coaching process. So keep the coaching process quite laser sharp is what I'm saying. You might want to check in with everyone as you come in. So as you come in, just walk around and check in with them. So you've got a bit of a system. They know when to catch you rather than always trying to catch you on the run. Have a half a day when you meet with people. So just block out half a day where basically they can come in and out as often as they want. Learn how to laser coach, which is what I've just said, so you can get to the hard things quickly, but give them your full attention when you are with them. I mean, they're just ideas just off the top of my head. But if your question hasn't been sufficiently answered, drop me an email and we'll make a time to talk about it, okay? And it would probably be very interesting to hear what you mean exactly by that. All right, so if you have other questions that haven't been answered, I will get back to you. Not through today's call because we do have to wrap it up at this point. If you have a question that you haven't answered, that you haven't asked, sorry, make sure you email them to me or post them on our private Facebook page. I've got an ebook on outsourcing. I know I do. I'll locate this and get it to you. It's a bit old now, so I just want to have a review through it, see if it's still relevant or not before I send it out to you. Our call next week is going to be about meetings, I've decided. So if you're interested in learning on how to do those better, be on the call next week. I'll send out a link to you about that call during the week. Hoping you've enjoyed today's bonus. If you've got any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Until then, though, if I don't hear back from you, have a great weekend and a great week coming up. All the best.